a shambles already. Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all well. In today's video, I have been asked a few times over on Instagram if I have any recommendations for people who haven't read much fantasy or haven't read any fantasy but really would like to get into the genre. So I am going to be recommending my fantasy for beginners. Obviously, if you're not a fantasy beginner, I recommend all of these books anyway. Like, I really enjoyed them all, but these are primarily like if you've never read fantasy before, I think these are like a good place to start. I, growing up, like read the Hunger Games and Divergent series, and those are like great places to start as well, but these are more like ones that aren't the obvious ones, I hope anyway. I mean, the first one I'm going to talk about is definitely an obvious one, but I feel like it's appropriate with the series coming out soon, and it is Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. It's got a really simple like glossary style front page that will help you if you need to refer back to anything. But the main premise of the story is really easy to follow. So essentially our main characters, Alina and Mal, are soldiers, and where they live there's a massive shadow fold. It's like a massive plane of darkness, and they have to cross over it in order to get goods for where they live. There's like some evil ass creatures in the shadow fold, so they go across it and the regiment is attacked, but Alina unleashes this magic that she did not know that she possessed, and the story basically follows from there. And then we have the Grisha, who are the people in this book who have powers. So there's 3 different types of Grisha, and it's all explained at the front. But yeah, I really enjoyed this first book in the series. This is the first in a trilogy, and then we've got a duology which is also set in the Grishaverse but with completely different characters, and there's also another duology which is like a prequel to the Shadow and Bone trilogy, I believe, which I haven't read yet but I've heard amazing things about. I think a good place to start with fantasy is always if there's a TV adaptation to go to afterwards, because if you struggle to imagine these things, then you've got something to refer to afterwards, which I think is always really useful. The next series that I'm going to recommend probably won't come as a surprise to those of you who follow me on Instagram, and it is the Caraval series by Stephanie Garber. I read these last year and they literally blew me away. The majority of people who have read these, especially people that I know who delve in and out of fantasy but aren't really fantasy lovers, absolutely loved this book. Basically, the premise of the book is that once a year there's an infamous Caraval that is held, and it is like a big interactive game which is invite only, and it's always in a different location, and the most prestigious people go, and you can watch or you can play the game, and there's all this magic and you don't know what's illusion and what's real, and it's incredible, but you can't allow yourself to be sucked too much into the magic, and it's really easy to do so. We follow our main characters, Donatella and Scarlett, who are sisters, and following their mother's death, Scarlett wrote to the infamous legend who runs the Caraval. She wrote to him every single year to ask for an invitation, and this year they got their invite. So it's so incredible, it's so magical, the world building is so beautiful. It's not like complex fantasy, it's just highly immersive and highly magical, and I just love the setting of it being like a carnival and like a circus. It's so clever. The characters are phenomenal, and the books 2 and 3 in the series don't disappoint either. I think I rated all 3 of them 5 stars in the end. Yeah, I love the writing style of this. It's really descriptive. It's really easy to follow along to. So if you've never read fantasy before, it's a really good place to begin. Next, I'm going to recommend A Curse So Dark and Lonely by Brigid Kemmerer. Now, this one is the first in a trilogy again, and the first book, this one, is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and then the second and third books continue from this story, but they're not so much a retelling aspect. So basically we have our main character Harper, who lives in Washington DC, and she's got cerebral palsy. The disability rep in this is really well done as well. And then in Emberfall, which is like a fantastical realm, we have our main character Ren, and he is cursed. He is the prince, and he's been cursed by an enchantress, and he has to find a girl to fall in love with him. So basically he has a season, and then at the end of the season, if the girl hasn't fallen in love with him, she goes back to wherever she came from and time restarts and he has to start again. And his henchman, Ren, has the power to go from Emberfall into Washington DC, or like the human realm, to choose the girls basically. And Ren has gone to choose the next girl, and Harper mistakes him for like some big bad kidnapper, which technically is what he is. It is a bit strange, but Harper like saves the girl that he has picked, so Ren is forced to choose Harper instead, and then Harper gets stuck in Emberfall, and it is all about how she deals with that. She's a really strong female character. I loved it so much. It's a really, really clever retelling of Beauty and the Beast, and I really enjoyed it, and the second and third books in my opinion are even better than the first one, so I highly recommend this. The disability rep's fantastic as well, which is always a nice little bonus. The next one I'm going to recommend, I actually read ages ago, and I've only read the first book in this series, but I do think that this would be like a really nice, easy fantasy for someone who's never read fantasy before. And it is The Extinction Trials by S.M. Wilson. And basically, it says the Hunger Games meets Jurassic Park, and that is literally exactly what it is. Essentially, we follow our main character, Storm Chaser, and Lincoln, and they live in a world where resources are running really low, and there's another island which you have to travel to, where dinosaurs live, but on this island they may be able to inhabit it and use the resources if they can find a way to share the island with the dinosaurs. But basically they need people who are brave enough to go there, because people who have been on this island before tend to not come back because dinosaurs aren't exactly friendly. So they hold the trials, which is voluntary, but if you come back with information then you win a prize. So basically I think the gist is they pick people, and then they have to collect dinosaur eggs to bring back for research. So our main character, Storm Chaser, and Lincoln both live in squalor. I think Lincoln is participating to help his family. Storm Chaser is an orphan, and they both participate in the trials, and they both sort of end up teaming up a little bit. And it's really cool. I'd actually forgotten I'd read this and how much I enjoyed it. But speaking about it now, I remember a lot more about it than I thought I did, which is a really good sign about a book, because it just proves how unique it was. So yeah, I really enjoyed this, and now I've like made myself excited to read books 2 and 3, so there we go. The next one I'm going to recommend is a standalone fantasy, because I know not everyone likes reading series or being committed to a series, and it is Cinderella is Dead by Kaylin Bayron. This is sort of a Cinderella retelling, but it's not. It's set like 200 years after Cinderella, where like the story of Cinderella is essentially their Bible. It's really, really clever and really, really cool, and it follows our main character, Sophia. So basically every year all the girls who are of age have to go to a ball and be picked for marriage, but Sophia is in love with her best friend and she doesn't want to go to this ball, and it's about fighting for that freedom. And it was really, really good. I gave it 4 stars, I think, when I read it. I mean, on reflection, I don't remember too much about it. I do remember loving it though, and it's a great standalone. It's not too heavy fantasy because it's a concept that we're all familiar with as well, which is always helpful. And then the last one that I'm going to recommend is also another standalone, and it is Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas. I mean, I'm not just recommending this to fantasy beginners, I am recommending this to every single person who may possibly see this. Public service announcement. This was my favourite book that I read in 2020. I didn't actually include it in my video because I read it after I filmed the video, but honestly, this stole the show for me. Follows our main character Yadriel, who's trans, and he's from a Latinx family who can't quite get to grips with the fact that he's trans. And in their family, all the men in the family are Brujo, and Yadriel wants to prove that he is a Brujo because he's a trans man, and if he can prove that he's a Brujo, then his family are more likely to accept him. So he goes to the church and he summons a ghost, and he ends up summoning the ghost of Julian, who has a lot of unfinished business. So they make a deal that Julian will allow Yadriel to get him to pass through to the afterlife if Yadriel will help Julian finish his incomplete business. And it's just so clever, it's so good. I fell in love with these main characters. It's fantasy, but like not much. Like there's minimal magic and minimal fantasy. The majority of the story is following these boys and their relationship and their adventure, and it's just so much fun. But there's a lot of really important topics in here. Aidan Thomas, genius. He just honestly smashed this book, and I'm so excited to read his new release, which is Lost in the Neverwoods. So yeah, honestly, best book I read in 2020. I couldn't not include this in this video. Fantasy lovers and fantasy beginners, this book is honestly a must read. So that concludes my fantasy for beginners video. I hope I spoke about something that interests you if you are a beginner to fantasy. If I spoke about something that you really want to read, let me know. And if you've read anything that I recommended, let me know what you thought of them as well. If you did enjoy this video, I would really appreciate if you subscribed to my channel. I post bookish videos regularly, book recommendations, book reviews, wrap-ups, TBRs, reading vlogs, book hauls, all sorts and everything. And also, if you like this video, giving it a thumbs up really would mean the world to me. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye!